I have a 4-year-old next to me trying to learn how to rollerblade. This could get very interesting. Okay, so I do want to do a brief introduction here. I've had a lot of subscribers. If you're new, I'm assuming that you have watched past videos, but if you haven't, go ahead. I started this channel a while ago just to kind of have a dialogue going, and then homeschooling kind of became another voice of this platform, is how I like to say it. And then when we moved up here to Indiana after being in California for X number of years and kind of just starting alone, my husband is going to seminary school to be a pastor. So we're living off of his income part-time. That'll be a question that I address here. And so that became, again, another voice for this platform because the economy is kind of just in a scary place right now. And I kind of wanted to offer what I could to those of you out there willing to listen, just because it's kind of a crazy time right now, and I just wanted to share the things that I had learned, kind of share the journey that I'm having to relearn, and then just kind of, again, begin this dialogue again, going back and forth of just financial whatever. One of the things that I will talk about is the comment of, am I homeschooling anymore? Again, part of this introduction, I have 5 children that I homeschool. I really love the Charlotte Mason method, which is why I believe a lot of new subscribers came, was the Charlotte Mason videos that I had put out. But over time, I just didn't want to be lumped into something that's kind of it has to be this way, or it's not Charlotte Mason's, just inspired. And I don't really care what you call it. Like I said in another video, I'm just homeschooling. So I've kind of stepped back from sharing specific Charlotte Mason, this is how we're going to do it kind of content, and just trying to figure out how to go forward in that. So I do want to share homeschooling content because, again, I think with the homeschooling boom or growth that we had this past year, people are still trying to figure out how to do it the right way. And I'm telling you that after my eldest is 13 this year, so after 8 years plus homeschooling, I still haven't figured out the right way to do it because life evolves and we have to kind of just figure out what works best for us. So, and I think it goes back to that platform of wanting to share Charlotte Mason in a real life tangible way. I want to share homeschooling in a real life tangible way, and sometimes that means that you sit down and do what you can in that day and you just keep trying to hit those points, and that may mean that it doesn't look a well-structured or well-oiled day because you're just working towards that in whatever capacity. And the interesting thing about it is you can start figuring things out. Life throws you a curveball and then you feel like you're back at square one trying to figure everything out again. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned in homeschooling this year. So, but yeah, after seeing the subscriber count, and I'm like, well, I don't really share a lot of that anymore. I would like to. I really do think that Charlotte Mason had a wealth of wisdom that really should be shared more. Whether or not you model your homeschooling life after her, there's just some wealth there that I really like to take away from it. Okay. So again, I just kind of want to take some of these comments that I've had and either expound on them or address them. I thought this would be a really good money management Monday video. I came up with that in the car yesterday and I was kind of like, ooh, I like the name of this. So we'll see if that sticks around, but I really do like the name of Money Management Mondays. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so here we go. I'm not going to use names, just I don't want to sound like I'm calling them out or anything, so I'm just not going to do that. A commenter asked on my one video about our Dave Ramsey journey was, had we grown up in poverty? And again, I think that word is a very interesting word. It's a very interesting word. Poverty for some people is poverty for others. Back where we were, a lot of people would have said that we grew up, my husband would have grown up in poverty. They, like I said, didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, is what they call it. And they did a lot of things from scratch, so there just wasn't enough money to do anything. But you come up here and you learn what a lot of people have gone through up here. And I would say that they didn't go to bed. Well, okay, they're kids. I'm sorry. They all go to bed hungry, but they had a good full three good meals per day. And they were all clothed. They had electricity, they had beds, they had house. So I would say that that there was no danger of that. And so in that case, poverty they did not experience, but they didn't have money. They didn't have any money to go to the store and just throw something into the cart if they wanted to. Now my family was middle class. That being said, there was 11 of us. And so again, you don't just go and say, well, I would like to do this. Even if you could, my parents always had the idea that that wasn't the best thing for you. And they constantly thought in terms of the future. And so we had a great variety of good books that, looking back now, I realize just how expensive that was. But we didn't go on vacations. I can remember 2 vacations that we went on in my entire 18 years. But we had dance class. We had, oh dear, I'm sure we had other things. That's the one that I can mainly remember. We had good quality dolls. So what my mom did was when she purchased something, she purchased in the kind of way that the poor people, the lower income think. If you're going to buy something, you buy something that's going to last. You don't just buy throwaway things, because if you have the money to do it, you do it well so that it doesn't become a throwaway. That was just her philosophy and things. So I hope that helps. Insofar as like going forward and knowing how to deal with money, it really just depends on your family. Again, it's just a different mindset. Now for us, when we kind of sat down and figured out finances, we saw what our parents were doing, but each one had a completely different, we only see it as kids. Okay, so we already see it as an established family. And when you don't have that established family, and then I feel like I'm not presenting this well, but you kind of see it as in the middle of something. When you're starting to pay attention as a kid, you tend to start noticing things like my mom would need 2 shopping carts when she would go grocery shopping, and she would do it in such a way that it would be several weeks that she would need to go to the grocery store again. It was a very good economic thing to do, and she hated grocery shopping. Whereas my mother-in-law would just be like, okay, we're going to shop week at a time, because then I can shop the sales. I can pinch, because again, for her, it was just based on what they had at that moment. Whereas my mom and my dad and how their finances work, it just is different. That's what it boils down to. And as a kid, I learned how to balance a checkbook. I learned how to do this. I went through that whole course. So did my husband. He learned how to do taxes in such a way. But somebody that's professionally doing taxes ended up showing us different ways that we could bring, that we can declare other things for our tax return. And different things that I learned, like shopping large, didn't really work when we were a small couple. There you go. That was a very long explanation for that. So the thing is that you can start off really wealthy and then go into a situation where you have to figure out how to work with that. Or you could start off very poor and you work your way up to more amounts of money. Typically people do that. They work out from poor and go to rich. I can't tell you how many times I heard how the couple that just started struggling, you know, starting on their own and struggling, first married couple, y'all, that was probably the easiest time of our financial life. Yes, so we had some months that we were like, okay, how do we get this going? And it was just, you know, record keeping is what it all amounted to. And there was a time when we had a deficit that was really large. And I was freaking out, like, well, how did that happen? And it was mainly because we didn't have a budget. Everything, all the cash just went into this old metal box, and we just pulled out as needed. And we had a paper in there so you would track it all down. But, you know, when you're running to the grocery store and not used to the system, I didn't track very well. So we had a huge deficit. I'm talking a couple $100. No, it was more than a couple hundred. I think it was like near a $400 deficit. And I was just like, how did that happen? So you learn, but honestly, that was the easy, to have a $400 deficit and not realize it until a few months down the road when you're like, okay, we really need to sit down and add everything up and line everything up. Yeah, that was probably like the biggest thing that we dealt with. But it was so much easier just being the two of us on $16,000 a year than it was four of us on $16,000 a year in diapers and all of these other things that we were having to figure out. And now, what are we at? Now we're at $18,000 a year roughly, and we have 7 of us. So, and that's just what my husband brings in. That's not anything that I have brought in to this right now. Addressing government assistance. I'm pretty sure I made it very clear in that video, but I really believe that is something that's called a conviction. Now, a conviction isn't necessarily a black and white, right and wrong thing. It is something that God has to convict you of. So, God's law and standards calls us to be holy, calls us to not sin, calls us to help the widows and the orphans and uphold justice. God's standard says do not steal, do not commit adultery, do not murder. All of these things, those are standards that you have to uphold to. There is nothing in the Bible that says you cannot go on to government assistance. It's a matter of fact. There is a scene in the Bible where the Pharisees are trying to trip up Christ, and they're like, should we pay taxes? And he's like, well, render the things that are of this world and give to God the things that are his. So he wants our hearts. He doesn't really care if it's all about paying taxes or not. It's like, where is your heart with the Lord? That is the basic thing that I'm going to go here. So government assistance, we have chosen not to. That is our conviction. Just like for you, maybe your conviction is that you need to wear skirts. Your conviction is that you don't worship on Sunday, you worship on Saturday. Your conviction can be different based on what God is revealing to you. Okay? That doesn't mean that God's standards are different. That just means that when we have something to work on, God will convict us of those things. And those are what we have to pay attention to, because generally it means that there's an idol in there somewhere that if we are in, a friend of mine calls it in tune with God. I don't quite like how that is phrased. I know what she's talking about and I agree with that, but I don't really like the term in tune. But you know, something's out of tune, there's a discord, and so you do want to be in tune. So okay, we'll go with it. But if you are in tune with God and with the Holy Spirit, then anything that he is showing to you isn't necessarily going to be the same across the board. So in terms of government assistance, we are convicted not to do that. And there are times when we have stepped outside those convictions or kind of dipped our toe in water because it would be a little bit easier. And to be honest, every time we have done that, there has been some serious regrets. There are some things that I probably don't ever expect to share on this channel. But I'm saying this in the sense that I have been there. I have gone outside what we just did not believe was right. But we thought that doing this thing would be better or more right than maybe doing it this way. Or if this wasn't right, then God would just shut it down. And it all worked out in the end. But hindsight, my husband and I look back and we're like, oh, if we could do anything different, that would have never happened. We would never have gone down that road. And that too, with convictions, I also want to say, sometimes other people's convictions, especially if they're within a near and dear circle of yours, can seem like those convictions are the right thing and that you should have those as well. But when you can step outside that circle, when you can move over and then you look more closely at the heart of why they have these convictions, why they follow these convictions, and why they believe other people should have these convictions. Again, if they're not scriptural, there's some things in scripture that just aren't clear. And it has to do with your heart in the matter. I know I keep saying that over and over, but it's not well, if it's right for you, that's fine, but maybe it's not right. It's not one of those things that you do a personal study on convictions. That's, I guess, the best thing I can do or say to you. But these family members had some convictions that as we went further on, we're like, you know, those aren't our convictions. Those are their convictions. And that's fine. As long as you're not accepting something because somebody else does or refusing it because you're uncomfortable with it. But either one is because where you think God has you, that is going to be kind of where you need to be on that. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. So I have 2 more questions. All right, let's tackle these. The other thing is, am I being really honest when I say we live off of $1,500 a month, but I'm bringing in income to kind of help with that? Maybe not in that sense. That's why I keep talking about it every single time in my videos when I'm laying things out. I'm like, yes, there is more income here. But if you notice, the bulk of our bills and everything is being paid out of my husband's paycheck. And so that's kind of where I based it off of, because I don't have a reliable income that I can account for. So there's usually a plus sign on my videos. I don't always manage to do it. Sometimes it, I think, affects algorithms, so I'm kind of careful in trying to share those things. Also, too, I'm trying really hard to just live off my husband's income. I think it would be really beneficial for us if I was to do that. And then as much as I could, just try to put what I bring into paying off the house, putting it on mortgage, and anything else that I could think of. And in this case, if you're looking at it in that way, if I was to have it in such a way that we just live off my husband's debt and I had a garage sale, is that income that I'm supposed to put on the sheet, thumbnail, everything. So there's a bunch of things. But if you notice, the majority of what we're living off of, all of the bills, the tithing, everything else, the majority of it is my husband's income. Now, I just finished watching a ton of budgeting videos. A ton. Many of the gurus out there are budgeting off of $4,000 to $5,000 or more monthly income. And I think it really is, you just raise your standard of living when you have more, because you think you should. Like, oh, I can afford more, so therefore I will have this higher standard of living. So I'm trying to do that in such a way that the income I bring in isn't raising our standard of living. It's still keeping it at what my husband has. Now, if you've noticed, a lot of the things that we've done are barely covering with what my husband brings home. And so if I didn't have all these side incomes, obviously we would be in a situation where I would need to figure out our food situation, right? Because there's just not a lot extra for the food. And so I still don't think we would go on government assistance. I still think I would go to my family, to my church, and just be like, okay, what do you need? What can I do? Can I start cleaning the church for some extra money? Can I start, Mom, can I start taking over some of this work that you need done for extra money? Just go around the neighbors. Hey, I noticed you got some dogs. Can I start taking them for a walk? And just so I'm already doing everything that I would be doing with this income, right? And I did do that video on all the little things that we did. Unfortunately, like through that whole video, the dryer is going in the background, so there's a lot of background noise, and I apologize. It's not very professional, but I never said my channel was professional. Okay, it's just me as a mom in this, just coming to you and trying to just help out in any way I can. So there's that I'm addressing. Just we do what we can with what we have, and we're thankful for every day that we got it. The kids are getting enough food, and you know, in comparison to what other kids have around the world, I think we're doing really great. Sure, it would be nice to have a better diet, a better budget. But again, as we're just in this transition stage of trying to figure things out, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not being attacked, just letting y'all know. But I'm doing the best I can, trying to figure things out, looking at not just the here and now, but looking at later on, like I've talked about previously. Yes, we have it now with my husband being in the seminary school, making part-time income. When my husband finishes seminary school and becomes a pastor, here's another comment. Yes, he will. I don't know of any other pastor, honestly, that doesn't have another job. I haven't met one. They all seem to have multiple jobs because a congregation really just can't sustain them or sustain the living, even basic livings. And so, yeah, he'll still need a job, but my husband's 20 years older than me. He's 51, I think. Yeah, I think it's 51. I'm 32, I think. What birth date do you want? I'll give it to you. Ages, give me a few years to figure that out. So we have an age gap here. There's a 20-year age gap. And my husband's getting older. He's been working hard physically his whole life. And I'm watching him and I'm like, his body is breaking down. He's dropped in height. His muscles just ache now. He's not going to be able to sustain this hardworking life that he has. And honestly, he's still going to be able to only work part-time because he's going to need to put energy into his ministry. So this isn't going to change for us when this is all done. And this is something that I knew was a possibility that was going to happen when we got married. And so it's, again, this is just the kind of transition in our life that I'm going to be doing. And I think about it in terms of the Proverbs 31 woman. You know, she didn't just take care of the house. It wasn't just a Titus 2 atmosphere of raising children to love their husbands, to love their wives, to be keepers at home. The Proverbs 31 woman, which is the ideal woman, right? Which, by the way, let me disclaim something. No, it wasn't written by a man. It was written by his mother or mother-in-law. Mother? About trying to find the perfect woman. So it was actually written by a woman. And this godly woman says that the best wife to find, the wife of excellence, considers the field and buys it, and from her earnings, plants a vineyard. She considers, she provides belts to the tradesmen. She's doing all these industrial things to benefit and bless her husband and her family in industrious ways. That's kind of my thinking in this long term. I'll raise my kids to love the Lord with all their heart, soul, and mind. That's my job. My job as a wife, first of all, I became a wife. My job as a wife is to help the heart of my husband safely trust in me. So I'm working on these finances. I'm working at bringing in other income. I'm also thinking about long term because she is not afraid of snow, for all of her household is clothed in scarlet. We're prepared. Still working on that one, but I'm thinking about these things as I go along on these different paths. As I make these videos, as I sit down and do these budgets, as I plan out financial years, as I do all of this, these are all the things that I'm thinking about. And so that's kind of why I make these videos for you. I didn't have these back in the day. And a lot of people that were trying to help were so far out of our league. So we're like, yeah. People were talking about, oh, it's so hard. We're paying for, what are the braces? And we're still trying to figure out how to go to Disney. I'm like, yeah, it's so hard. I'm not sure. And I'm like, I can't get a tooth pulled because I don't have the hundreds of dollars that it takes. So in the end, the amount of money worked together, but there's still such a gap. People are talking about how they can't do all these things and going on Disney trips. Not joking, like everyone in our town talks about going on a Disney trip. Everybody on YouTube talks about going on a Disney trip. We've looked at the money and we're like, that could be a down payment. That could be a car replacement. Like, we just think about things so differently. There wasn't anything like that around when I was growing up. I felt like an outcast. Like, am I doing something right? Should I be wanting these things? Is that how you get financial success? It's not, I know. But you start thinking about things differently and start trying to figure out what it is that you're missing. And that's why these videos, yes? And that's why all of these kind of came about. Okay, so before I get more just rambly and passionate about speaking the same old, same old, same old, I'm going to go, it's already 2 o'clock. Goodness gracious me. And get back to my family and get back to life. We've got lots to do, places to go, people to see. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. And until next time, y'all, stay sane.